Hey everyone, it's Kai from WCC, and today we're going to talk about the current diversity of decks in Standard, and is that a good thing or not? Is diversity of decks right now a good thing? And we're going to we're going to look at the shop tournaments, the locals results for last week in Japan. We've got quite a big diverse number of decks here, and a lot of them I'd consider to be either tier 1 or 2, but very, very competitive decks. So let's go through each of these decks for other moments. We've got Charlotte, very, very strong deck, pretty much a tier 1 deck in my opinion. Overlord the Cross, yep, again, another tier 1 deck. I don't really rate it as high, but everyone else does. MLB, probably a tier 2 deck by now. Harry, same thing, tier 2 deck, but sooner or later I'm going to drop it to tier 3 because it gives me the most terrible hands that and very inconsistent as well. So I don't really like Harry, but a lot of people do. Yasue, again, Murakumo is delivering, although everyone's been not rating it high. But, you know, people play it, people realize Murakumo still does the goods. So it's 9%, and I think it's well deserved. Pretty much tier 2 deck. Night Rose, I think, is a pretty confirmed tier 1 deck, or tier 2, depends on how you look at it. Messiah, tier 1 deck, or tier 2. They're basically pretty much the same. Hello Happy World, best bang dream deck of the lot. Yeah, sure, why not? And then Gear Chronicle. We've got Gear Chronicle. He's pretty much, I think, is a really good tier 2 deck, especially the PR. So we've got quite a lot of good representation here. We've got a others, 13 others, I think, yeah, or 19 others. So all of these decks are very strong, and I'd say, yeah, you can play any of these decks and do very well at any tournaments, even bigger tournaments. Like you go to if there was BCS, which unfortunately there isn't, but if there was a big tournament nearby and you want to take one of these decks out for a drive, then don't take Harry. Because you probably, unless it's a team tournament, but you know, any of these decks pretty much can do pretty well. But is that a good thing or not? So I can tell you, right? I can design a game that is super diverse. You know, 100 clans, and all of them are competitive, right? I could make Dark Paladins with Shadow Nectar and Neo Paladins and Pale Paladin, I guess. And they'd be all very strong because I'm just going to give them all the same effect. They're all going to be vanillas. Somewhere along the line I'll give them Counterblast 1 and they get 5k. But they're all going to have the same effect. And that means they're all going to be pretty much just good, right? They're all going to be competitive because they all have the same effect. And that's pretty much just Zazan in a nutshell because everyone's playing vanillas. But I'm digressing a bit. Yeah, if everyone has the same cards or the same options, then everything is diverse, and that means the game is gonna be very, very boring. Or we can go another way. We can say, okay, let's make this deck different. We'll make them wildly different. Let's imagine there's all these different clans, and they have their all little gimmicks. Maybe this one restands 5 times. Maybe this one restands its reguards 5 times. This one gets 5 drive checks, right? we give them all different effects, and then kind of give them also over-the-top effects, and then just balance them out by game mechanics. And right now, the game mechanic that is basically making every deck viable is going first. And of course, you know, first turn advantage is a very hard thing to balance. Sometimes going first is very strong. Sometimes going second is very strong. You know, in G era, you want to go second because then you don't have to think about playing the great game. Your opponent has to think about it. And if he doesn't, you just get a straight first stride and do very, very well. Meanwhile, some formats like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh's had its good first turn formats and good second turn formats, and even chess, right? Chess, it's wildly acknowledged that going first in chess is more advantage than playing as black because you go second. Now, balancing that is very hard. But there are times where the first turn advantage is not as significant as you would think. Like, you know, in chess, again, sure, going second is a slight disadvantage, but you can always play a way around it, although it does lead to more draws. At the same time, it's not insurmountable that you just can't win. At the beginning of this year, I think it was around a good time. It was a good time where the first turn advantage was not very high. I think we had Nuno, if you've been keeping up with him, he's the world champion of Standard. Apparently he played like going second a lot of his games, and he still won. So going second, not that much of a deal during that kind of era, but I think in the beginning of the that was the joke. Go first, you roll the dice, if you go first you win. And I think we're kind of entering a similar situation with the the V reboot of G, so VG in Vanguard. So I was talking to my friend Mark. We were testing Butterfly over the weekend, and he mentioned that going first in Standard is very similar to getting first stride in Premium, except you don't you don't get any of the counterplays, like, you know, fighting for grade 2 to get that first stride, and you don't get any of the buffering effects to, you know, buff your generation break count, so that, you know, when you have to stride second, you can go into a high like GB3 stride instead of just a first stride with G Guardians. Instead we have, you know, just hard limiting effects, like if your opponent is not grade 3, then you don't get the full effect, or you have to have the grade 3 in Soul, or Soul Blaster grade 3, things like that. And then otherwise we don't even have G Guardians, we have a Quick Shield, which is not really the same thing. I mean, one gives you a great effect that buffs your entire game plan, that, you know, does something, and a Quick Shield is basically discard fodder. It's just plus 5k. So right now we're in a situation where there's no counterplay to going first, you just roll better. And going first, although there's those restrictions that I've been talking about, right? You know, those grades. Let's read some of these restrictions, okay? So where's the mouse? Here it is. We've got Night Rose, our buddy Night Rose, new card. Everyone's simping for it, but her restriction is that if your opponent is not grade 3, you don't get 10k on your Vanguard. Meanwhile, you still get 5 attacks, because you still get to call stuff and make those attacks, so it doesn't feel like much of a restriction. You still get 5 attacks, you still get to smash your opponent 5 times, you still get, you know, the attack power boost as well. Let's look at Charlotte. He's got a kind of a soft restriction, and I think it's a bit too soft. It's if you have 13 Soul, you can withstand 2 cards instead of 1. So basically, if you don't reach that 13 Soul, you can still only get 4 attacks, which is pretty good against 4 fat attacks as well. Charlotte makes things fatter than they normally would. So they have 4 attacks, but honestly, if you ride chain your deck properly, you know, you manage to draw your yellow bolt, you manage to draw like an Emblem Master Demonted, and then you get an extra Soul Charge or 2 along the way. You're gonna hit that 13 pretty easily. So 5 attacks, 5 fat attacks, trigger a crit and win, and then you can play a number of terrors to draw 10 cards, or 8 cards with 2 drive checks, so 10 cards. So yeah, it's not really much of a restriction, buddy. Not much of a restriction. What other stuff do we have? We've got Susanoo. This guy has the saddest restriction in the game. It's if you have a grade 3 in Soul, then you can, instead of looking at 2, you look at 3. So instead of getting only a quad drive, you get a quint drive. But you have this forces you to run those Uriels and stuff to like try and Soul Charge a grade 3 to get his max effect on it. And even if he doesn't, he's still getting 4 drive checks. It's not bad. And then lastly, we have Alter Ego Messiah. He doesn't even have a restriction, alright? He just unlock stuff, and there's 5 attacks and smash your opponent in the face. So these restrictions aren't really consistent. Like if we look at like Harry here, he just got like a hard restriction, alright? If your opponent's not grade 3, you only get to call 2 instead of 4, which is pretty lame when you're a Harry player. But like, it's not consistent. Some decks are just clearly better than others because their restrictions just are nearly non-existent. Like, I think Charlotte, right? Current, I think, is tier 1 deck Charlotte. And yeah, there's just no counterplay to them. There's no counterplay to them. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this going first in Standard. How is it peaking? Has it just been the same the whole time? Do you feel differently? Do you feel like, you know, going first is not a big deal anymore? Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about our VG format right now. And yeah, just like and subscribe, do all that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!